Hi, I'm Diane Samet, and I want to show you how to use Adobe Illustrator, which means we're going to be working in vector, and how to do vector fur, how to give that illusion of fur. Now, it's not the only way to do it, but it's how I solved the problem when I came across the need to create vector fur. Now, there are some files that I'm going to be working with, and one specifically I call fur texture, and if you want a copy of that file, all you have to do is contact me. There's my contact information. You can email me or go to my website and email me, contact me through the website, and I can go ahead and give you the the file so that you'll have it to work with or to look at. In the meantime, you'll just have to go ahead and just follow along with this video. First thing I want to do is show you what it looks like when it's done. So I'm going to zoom in on this little squirrel down here sitting on the tree branch. You can see his tail is furry. I have the illusion of fur, and of course it's all vector, and I want to go ahead and show you how that's built. So first I'm going to do is destroy him. That's why I've got a copy of him over here. I'm going to pull him apart so you kind of get a sense of how he's built. And then we'll move into the fur texture file, and I'll show you exactly how he's built. So I'm going to get my selection tool and select the guy. He is grouped, so I'm going to ungroup him. And the first thing I'm going to remove are some of these transparent shapes. These are very light transparency. I'm going to open up the appearance panel and pull it out, as a matter of fact, because I like to look at it and have it right here next to me. You can see that this group of shapes has an 11% multiply applied to it, and if I double click on the content, you can see that no stroke and then just a black. So it's just a little shadow that's added to help his tail tuck in behind his back and his spine. So there's like a couple of these because I build them up. I find that building up these shapes actually gives me a richer, deeper shadow than just doing one shape. And there's another one, and I think there's another one here as well. So I'm just getting those out of the way. Matter of fact, we don't even actually need them. I'm just going to delete them. Now if I select, wow, all those anchor points. Those are actually a series of shapes. They were laid down with a brush, so you'll see that it's really not that hard or difficult to do. But that's one grouping of shapes, and then underneath it, I had another series of shapes, and I think there's another little disconnected piece right here. So these three shapes are actual, or these three groups of shapes are the illusion of texture. Behind them, there were the silhouette back shapes. And I've got a couple transparent ones. I've got this transparent one that actually has these little white tips coming out. You'll see what those are in just a minute. And then I have this. This is the opaque back shape. You can see it's very angular, not really very brushy or very wispy. And so then we have another transparent back shape back here as well. So those sit behind the actual strokes of the texture. So let me zoom in on that top so you can see. As a matter of fact, I'm going to switch to my group select tool. And I'm just going to pull out one of the shapes, and let me see if I can't pull it out onto the workspace, which is nice and dark and gray, and that'll allow you to see it a little bit better. Okay, so let me zoom in on it now. Every shape there in that group has the same appearance. And as I select it singly, you can see that by going to the appearance panel, I can tell it's in a group, but what I'm looking at is the individual shape within the group. You'll see that it has a stroke called white tips. The white tips are a brush. Matter of fact, if I pull out the brush panel, you'll see there it is. I'm hovering over it, white tips. Now, white tips has no colorization set to it, so that's why even though here in the appearance panel it looks like the stroke is black, it comes out white no matter what. Matter of fact, I could change this to blue. I could change it to red. Doesn't matter. This brush is never going to change its color because I have it set that way. It doesn't look fully white because there is a lowered opacity on the group itself. If I go back to the group, you'll see that it's got a 48% lowered opacity on the group. So that's why we, oops. Come on, Diane. Let me go back and get this shape again. There we go. The fill is a gradient. Matter of fact, if I turn it off and on, you'll see now. Pull out the gradient panel. So you can see what that gradient is, how it's built, a light gray to a transparent. Matter of fact, if I click on that color stop, you can see it's a 0% opacity on it. So as I said, every single shape has that same appearance. And then there was another one, this other set of shapes. Let me pull out one of those. Once again, I'll go ahead and double click on the content within the appearance panel so that I can see what each of these little pieces within the group, how it was built. This has a solid gray fill and a dark gray stroke. Now this time the brush actually does have colorization methods added to it so that it can change color. And then it was called Pattern Brush 2. I guess I never bothered to actually name this one. But once again, if I turn the visibility on and off, you can see how I'm getting that stroke piece off. The little pieces there. So as I pull it apart, you could see that I'm stacking these items on top of each other, and that's what's giving us this illusion of fur that's coming on this little squirrel's tail. So with that being said, let's go to the actual file called Fur Texture, because in Fur Texture, I can go ahead and show you how this is built. Now this is the file that if you want to go ahead and go to my website, www.dianesammet.com, and I'll have the PDF there where you can download it, or you can email me and I can send it to you, either one. So starting off with the shape that you're going to work as your back shape. I would call these silhouette back shapes because a lot of vector work starts with a silhouette back shape. And I just use the word fur because you can put fur on anything. It doesn't have to be an animal. I put it on the letter R. This is just papyrus font that has been outlined or expanded. And then what I did is I took the paintbrush tool and I grabbed one of my brushes that I built, and all I'm doing is actually, creating this little kind of edge. Right? And I'm using a Wacom tablet, by the way, so that it makes it really easy and to flow these shapes. So you have to build a brush to create those shapes. And here's a couple brush shapes that were used. And you can see in my brush panel that it's highlighted, so that's the brush that I was using. How do I build a shape? I almost always start with a little circle. Get my my direct select tool, select that anchor point on the edge and pull it out. If I don't hold down shift, I'm going to get an angle to it. So hold down the shift key so it's nice and straight. And then that far right anchor point is a smooth point. What I want to do is go ahead and convert that. So now it's a corner point. I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side. I'm going to pull it out and convert it. Also, I noticed that my anchors and handles are black. That's controlled inside your layers panel. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this layer so that I can change that to a color we can actually see. Maybe not, that's not good color. Let's just do good old red. The top anchor point and the bottom anchor point, I select the top anchor point and I might just move it over to the left a little bit. I'm doing that by holding down my left arrow key. And then I might do the same thing with the bottom one. Now if I want this to move a little faster, hold down the shift key while you do it and then it'll increase in steps of 10. If you want to, oops, there we go. My computer is a little slow sometimes. Let me undo a couple of those. All right, so the top anchor point and the bottom anchor point, I think I might want to just go ahead and pull this straight out. Again, if I hold down shift, it's going to constrain that handle. And the same thing with the bottom one. I'll go ahead and constrain that handle by holding down the shift key. And that kind of smooths out that top and bottom anchor point. I'll go ahead and drag that into the brush panel. Say make an art brush because this is going to stretch from end to end. And we'll go ahead and make a tint colorization on this. This is what I was saying before. Sometimes my brushes, I can change the colors and sometimes I can't. And this is all controlled under colorization. For this particular one, if I want to be able to change the color after I have built it, changing the color by changing the stroke color, then make sure the colorization is set to tints. Give it a name. We'll call this Fur 1. And I hit OK, and then there's my new brush. I'm going to deselect, grab my paintbrush, and I'll go ahead and paint with my new brush. My computer is having a little bit of a slow day today, catching up with me. All right, so the brush strokes themselves have to be expanded. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of these letters. Let me get the whole thing. And I'll just move it down to show you this is actually quite easy. First, before I expand them, I want to go ahead and go into outline mode so that you can see that the paths themselves are just nothing more than little curvy paths. It's the appearance of the brush that's applied to the path that we're actually seeing. All right, so I really don't want to expand this, not for this demonstration. That's the back shape. So I want to expand these brush strokes. So I'll go ahead and select them. And I'll go ahead and get the rest of these in my selection. I go to Object on the menu and I simply hit Expand Appearance. And so now they're actual shapes. They're not brush strokes anymore. So you can see the difference. Okay, so that's where I did Object Expand Appearance, and that's what it looks like so far. We're in outline mode, and by the way, I'm on a Mac, in case you couldn't tell. And so I hit Command Y. It toggles back and forth between outline mode and full preview mode. All right, so before I go any further now, I need to make a copy. So what I did is I have my fur, right, with the expanded brush strokes. I'm going to make a copy of that so that I have two versions of it. And now I'll go ahead and use Pathfinder. Matter of fact, I think I'll go into View and hit Overprint Preview, so that makes the outside of my workspace white real quick. So remember, these are all the little strokes on the outside. So I want to go ahead and make a copy of this. So we have two copies. And on one of them, I'm going to use Pathfinder. So I go to Window, Pathfinder. Could use Shape Builder, but this is faster in this case. So I just hit Unite, so it's all one great big mega shape, and that's how we got that mega shape there. I'll bring this on down, and maybe I'll go ahead and fill it with the gray. So I'm using the eyedropper tool, just fill it with gray, just something. That's my back shapes. Now, why did I want the copy? I want the copy because I want to take these shapes. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit here so that I can see what I'm doing. I don't need this. Don't need this. I don't need the back shape here. I got it down below. Okay, I'm going to use these. If they're not a group already, I'm going to hit Command or Control G to group them. And then I'm going to bring them down on top of this. I'll use my Align panel to go ahead and align them to each other. I must have had Align to Artboard selected, which I do. Ultimately, what you want is to have those shapes right on top. All right, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. If I pull it apart again, you can see, and I'll undo that. Now for the fun part. Again, if you have a Wacom tablet or any kind of tablet, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. So with this, just pull it over. We have to draw the individual hair strokes. So you can see in my example here that I've gone in and I've drawn hundreds and hundreds of little strokes. And these all have the brush. So you can see if I go over to the brush panel, there it is, the same art brush that I used for the edges is now being used again. And I'm not going to sit here and do them over and over again because that's kind of redundant. You guys know how to draw little strokes with your paintbrush tool. But I want you to pay note is that one of the things is that this one is 0.5 points. So that is a certain width. And then I went back in using the same brush, and this one is 0.25 points. So some of them are a little fatter than the others. We're trying to add variety and randomness because with fur and hair and a lot of these other textural pieces, you need to make sure that you have randomness. So, you know, I spent some time in there with my little brush, just making little curves and stuff. All right, so then I copied them, and you can see we went 2 sets. So we have one set where the yellow strokes are, oh, come on, my computer's being slow again. All right, we have one set where the yellow strokes are a half a point in weight, and then the red strokes are a quarter of a point in weight. And so then I made a copy of those, and I just changed the weight size again. I just upped it a quarter of a point each. So this one, same strokes, very same strokes, but now the yellow strokes are 3/4 of a point, and the red ones are a half a point. Okay, so we need 2 sets. Okay, so we want just the fur. We don't want the back shape. And we're going to expand them again, just like we expanded the edges. Before I do that, let me just go into outline mode so you can see, before we expand them again, see there's all the paths. You don't actually see the shapes because we haven't expanded the brush yet. All right, so now I'm going to expand the brush. So now you can see if I zoom in, they are shapes. Lots and lots of tiny little shapes. Did that for both sets. Okay, so we need to create a pattern brush, a couple pattern brushes actually, and I use the same shape that I used for the art brush, only this time I built the pattern brush. So let me back out again. Let me find that shape that I built. And to build a pattern brush, let me just pull it over. Okay, let me get back where I belong. Again, I'm going to drag it into the brush panel. This time I'm saying pattern brush and hit OK. Now, there's a lot of options here in the pattern brush panel, but for this particular idea that we're going to create for the fur, you don't have to make any changes here whatsoever. The only change you probably should make is where it says colorization. Again, change that to tints. The idea behind that is that anything that's black in your profile can be recolored into the color of your stroke. Give it a name if you want. And then we'll hit OK. Now I've got a pattern brush. So if I wanted to go ahead and build a shape very quickly and apply the pattern brush, oh, maybe I need a bigger shape. Well, let me put mine back on here. Oops, hit cancel. There we go. My profile was too big, too big. So this is where it's giving us those little outside pieces. So if I go back into my brush panel, let me go ahead and deselect everything on the workspace and let me drag my profile out so that you can see how much smaller my profile is. Hence, that's why my other one wasn't working quite well, because it was too big. Let's make it really small. And once again, I'll drag that into the brush panel. Again, I'm just showing you how to build the pattern brush. And we'll say make a pattern, hit OK. Change that to tints, say okay, and let's see what that looks like. There we go. Much better. Those are the outside edges. So once you've built the two, and I built two, one white and one black. So now we have two sets of fur. Okay, so you had the one that the yellows were a half of a point wide in width and the reds were a quarter of a point. Okay, so those are the ones that we want to apply this appearance to. This is set of appearance right here. If I go ahead and select one of these shapes, you'll see again where's that appearance. Okay, solid gray fill, and it has the black tip brush on it, but remember the black tip brush has on it a colorization, so that's why it can change colors if you needed to. But there's the black tip brush. At a quarter of a point, as a matter of fact, if I go back in here and made it 1 point, you don't even see it. You have to make it a quarter of a point so that you can see it. Once they all have the same appearance, and then the other version here just has a lowered opacity. So the group has a lowered opacity down to 50%. Take the other set, the set that were a little bit bigger. Remember the yellows were now 3/4 of a point wide in width or weight, and the yellows were 3/4 and the reds were a half. Okay, so this time we're going to take that entire set of shapes and we're going to fill them with this appearance. And this is simply a gradient. Matter of fact, if I get the gradient tool, you can see there it is. All right, so the gradient, and if I pull out the gradient panel, you can see that one color stop is a light, very, very light gray, opaque and completely opaque. The other one is another gray, but it's 0 opacity. All right, so again, if I wanted to pull it around inside the shape, you would see some movement here. Of course, I'm doing things faster than Illustrator wants me to. And it has the white tips on the outside edge, the white tip paintbrush. I'm trying to get to an area where we can see it. I'm going to pull it right there between the two artboards so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so there's that white tip on the outside edge, and what is the stroke? Half a point. If I wanted to move it down, you could see I could get smaller little white tips on it, or back up to 1, I don't see anything again. But I think I used a half a point. These particular strokes, or these particular shapes have all the same appearance. Matter of fact, this is kind of fun. Let me go ahead and select it all. I'm going to hit Command H so that we don't see the anchor points anymore, and then I'll hit G. Look at all those little gradients. Those are all gradient tools. See, they're all the same. So I didn't even pull the gradients in any particular direction. I just applied the gradient and just let it go. That's all there was to it. As before, once these all had the same fill in them, let me go back and hit Command H so that you can see the anchor points again. And there we go. I lowered the opacity once again down to 50% lowered opacity. Last but not least, we stack everything on top. This is what it looks like when it's done. A little fur, and there we have our fur, illusion of fur, all nice and soft and fuzzy. But it's simply stacking the different appearances on top of each other. So there's the top one. That was the one I just outlined for you that has the gradient on it. And then below that was this one. This is the one that has the full opaque fill and the black tips, and then of course here's your silhouette shape underneath. And that is how I build my furry texture. Again, if you want to get a copy of that file, I'm more than happy to send it to you. Just go ahead and either email me or go to my website and I will send you what you need. Thanks again.